It's August of 2023, and I've been on no fap for a little over a month at this point, so it goes without saying, the urge to was insanely strong. Now at the same time, I'd been making TikToks of myself rapping for about 4 months. So I'd been getting a lot of attention from my female fans. But I remember there was this one night in particular, I come home from the gym, open up TikTok, and I see that this smoking hot girl, like we're talking 10 out of 10, had followed me on TikTok. So as soon as I see this, I follow her back, slide into the DMs, and I ask for her Snapchat. Now for the sake of this story, we'll call this girl Becky. 30 minutes later, Becky replies, she sends me her Snapchat. Becky Bex122, I add her on Snapchat, and we start snapping back and forth over the next couple of days. Now, Becky lived about a 12-hour drive away from me, so I couldn't exactly see her whenever I wanted to. But nonetheless, we continue talking, flirting with each other. And it gets to around 4 days later. I'm at work, she's taken the day off of school, and I'm sitting on Smoko, snapping her back and forth as I usually would, when all of a sudden she sends me a very nice photo. Now, I liked this girl beforehand, I found her very attractive. But let's just say this photo further amplified how attracted I was to her. Like, it made me so much more attracted to her, if you catch my drift. So we keep snapping each other over the next couple of weeks, and she kept telling me all these things, she wanted to do together. And the exact thing she said to me was, I could do whatever I want with her. And every time I would speak to this girl, it goes without saying, I would get so G'd up because I had watched so much porn in the past that my expectations, my fantasies in my mind were just so unrealistic, but I felt this girl was going to help me fulfill those fantasies, right? Now at this time, my brother and I had sort of been going back and forth talking about potentially going on a holiday to where this girl lived at the end of the year. It wasn't because she lived there, we were actually gonna go on a holiday there because it's a nice part of Australia. So I tell this girl that I'm thinking of going on a holiday there at the end of the year, we can link up and have a good time. But there was just one issue. I was still on bail for the court case that I was in. If you haven't seen that video, I'll pop it up on the screen, go give it a watch. Because I was on bail, that meant I had to adhere to some very strict conditions. I was not allowed out before 6 AM and past 8 PM without my parents. But this holiday my brother and I were talking about going on was exclusively just us. But I figured for sure, I'll be off bail by December. So I tell this girl, I'm gonna come there in December and, we'll have a good time. I keep talking to this girl every single night, she's getting me all randy. I've never spoken to a girl this hot in my life. But around mid-September, she sort of goes cold on me, she stops talking to me. I haven't spoken to her in a couple days. And so I message her, asking her what's good. And she tells me that she's got a boyfriend. And so I say, yeah, no, that's okay. He doesn't have to know. I'm coming to, Gold Coast in December, remember? And, she tells me that she might still be dating this guy by then. I reply to her saying, he doesn't have to know. We can keep it on the hush hush, being the sleaze bag that I was at the time. But long story short, she ends up blocking me on everything, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. So I stopped talking to Becky, and I wasn't like fucking heartbroken or anything, I was just cut because all these fantasies that I'd created in my mind, I was no longer going to be able to fulfill with her. And obviously all these fantasies, all these ideas that I'd created in my mind were a result largely of 4.5 years of constant everyday consumption. So porn had definitely created like a false perception of what I should expect in, physical interaction, intimacy with a girl. And all the messages we've been sending back and forth definitely didn't help because they were living up to my fantasies in like the virtual world, if that makes sense. So now by this point, I've been on NoFap for a little over 2 months, and I have it on my mind that the thing I need to get done as soon as possible is I make that my top priority. I stopped making as many TikToks on the rapping. I stopped working on my clothing brand. And I would say I add about 10 or 20 girls on Snapchat. Now, a few of the girls I add are sort of interested, but the conversations just aren't really flowing. Until one day I'm snapping this girl who I actually knew from school. And she sends me a photo of her friend who I'd never seen before. And as soon as I see this girl, I find her reasonably attractive. She wasn't anything too crazy, but to me, she was attractive at the time. And so I say to this girl, can you send me her Snapchat? I want to start talking to this girl. She sends me her Snapchat. Now, for the sake of this story, we'll call this girl Grace. Grace and I start snapping back and forth over the next couple of weeks until I eventually invite her around to my house. It's a Saturday morning and she arrives at around 11 AM. We end up sitting in my room, awkwardly chatting, making small talk for like half an hour. Then we eventually decide to put on a movie. I think we watched that Cane Bear, I believe it was called. And as we're watching it, I remember sort of trying to make advances on her, you know, like potentially kiss her or just like move closer. But I come back from the bathroom, you know, the movie's still playing in the background, and I try and sit sort of a bit closer to her. But the way I did it, it was sort of like I actually sat almost on top of her, and she says, "Geez, mate, you're gonna sit on top of me." So in my mind at the time, when I heard that, I thought, oh, she's no longer interested. You know, she's met me, she doesn't like me, so I'm not gonna try and make any more advances on her from here. So I sort of sit like a solid half a meter away, don't really try anything else until it gets to the afternoon. The movie finishes, you know, we wanna find something to do. I say, you know, it's a pretty good day outside, maybe we could go for a swim in my pool. She agrees, we grab some towels, I get dressed into my swimmers, we go out by the pool. We're sitting there for maybe 10, 20 minutes just by the side of the pool, sort of awkwardly talking again. It's getting a bit more flowy, but it still is very awkward. We walk over to the sunbed, which is actually sitting in the shade at the time, and we're contemplating going in the pool. You know, I'm saying about how cold it is, this and that. But this is when I finally tell myself that it's game time. I have spent a solid 3 hours with this girl and haven't even so much as given her a hug, because my Snapchat game was good, you know, texting back and forth. But when it came to talking to girls in person, I was fucking terrible. The worst, like bottom of the barrel. So I sit on the sunbed for a solid 10 minutes, just debating whether or not I should kiss this girl, thinking about it, right? Meanwhile, she's found like a lizard, she's letting it walk on her hand and stuff. And I finally tell myself it's time to stop being a pussy. I get up and I say to this girl, put your hands by her side, I'm gonna show you this cool trick that I saw on TikTok. At first, she's very hesitant, you know, she thinks what I'm gonna do is pick her up and throw her in the pool. But eventually she ends up putting her hands by her side. I walk a little bit closer, grab her waist, pull her in. She leans in as well. And not to get too fucking cheesy, but we had a beautiful moment. Like, it actually was a nice moment. So after this, I think she stays at my house for maybe another hour or two. She ends up going home that afternoon, and we keep on talking for the next couple of weeks. But as the weeks do go on, I start to see a few red flags, you know, things that I would definitely rule out a girl for. But I push them down. I tell myself they're no big deal. You know, this girl's different. She can change, all that sort of thing. But the problem with this was I wanted to change her into the type of girl that I wanted her to be. I didn't want her for the type of girl that she already was. So, you know, I see this girl's doing a lot of the degenerate behaviors that I used to engage in, you know, punching cones, going out on the weekend. But I started to rationalize in my brain, tell myself, oh, you know, she's a good girl. She can change all this shit. Because for the past 7 months, I had felt the loneliest I had ever felt in my entire life. Because you know how I mentioned I was on bail? Well, I couldn't speak to my mates because they were involved in the court case as well. So the only people who I was talking to was family. Just talking to the same people every single day, you begin to feel alone. You begin to feel very awkward around other people. And so because I started to feel comfortable around this girl, I felt a level of attachment to her. So I do my best over the next couple of weeks to change this girl because I so desperately craved that connection that I once felt with my first ever girlfriend. It was so, I don't want to get too fucking like cheesy once again, but it was like, you know, it was passionate. It felt really authentic, really genuine, and I craved that feeling once again. But the issue was I was not seeking out this girl for who she was. I wasn't seeking out her because I actually felt that level of connection. I was seeking out to make her someone who I could feel that level of connection with, if that makes sense. Now, the whole time I was with Grace, I knew I had to end it at some point, but the main issue for me was that she was fulfilling a lot of those desires that I mentioned earlier. So I found it very difficult to leave someone who was literally letting me live out my fantasies with her. I did a lot of things with Grace that I'm not so proud of, and in December of the same year, so 2023, I started, you know, getting on the beverages again. It wasn't anything too crazy, but I just remember turning to a fair few different vices at the time. And there were many nights where I would just get this sudden feeling of loneliness. Despite being in a relationship, I just got hit with this emotion, like I felt very empty inside. And I found it very strange, but this girl could always tell that something was up. So she'd ask me, you know, like, Luke, what's wrong? I'd always tell her that I was just tired. But I remember one Friday night in early December, I'm sitting in my room, hammered, and I'm writing music as I always would on Friday night. I end up writing this really depressing, emotional song. You can actually go listen to it. It's on Spotify right now. It's called Fake. I was just sort of rapping about all these, you know, things that had happened in the past year, some emotional topics that I hadn't really spoken about with anyone. and I was just getting some shit off my chest. But at the same time, I was snapping this girl, and she asked me if I was okay, you know. So I tell her, you know, I'm just tired, you know, I'm writing music, this and that. But as I'm sitting there, I sort of have this sudden epiphany, like this realization. This is not what I should be doing. I shouldn't be in the position that I'm in right now. I'm sitting in my room on a Friday night, out of my fucking mind, writing emotional, depressing raps, spending my nights getting pissed, having sex and snapping this girl. How the fuck is this my life? Now, the reason I had this realization at the time is because in the past, I had genuinely been into the personal development stuff, you know, going to the gym, ice baths, meditation, sauna, reading, journaling. And after having got with this girl, I threw all of that away, you know, started wasting a lot of time with her, drinking beverages again, as I said. I remember I was selling a bit of the booger sugar at the time, which wasn't good. I was doing a lot of negative things, putting a lot of negative into the world, a lot of negative into my mind. And so I felt like shit. But in February of 2024, I ended up cutting ties with Grace because I was only seeing her like every 3 weeks. And we sort of come to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work out. But she got very upset when I did that, and she ended up saying, no, we can, you know, we can make it work, all this sort of thing. But I said no, you know, went on my separate ways. And it's not something that I wanted to do at the time. I still wanted to be with her, not because I loved her, but because I still craved that genuine connection that I once had with my girlfriend, right? And I didn't realize this at the time, but that feeling of genuine connection can only be achieved when you actually like someone for who they are, not the fabricated fairy tale version of who you want them to become. So over the next couple of weeks, I sort of try and get back into a flow of things. You know, I want to start working on my business again, start making more music again. But that hole, it's eating me up inside. And so I turn to the fakest, most disgusting form of intimacy that there is, porn. Now, keeping in mind, by this point, I had not watched it in a solid 7 or 8 months. And looking at pornography now, I can see the bigger picture as to how it's the most counterintuitive thing you can do to feel that genuine connection. It's two people on a screen who don't even actually genuinely love each other, fucking as a paid performance. But after about a week of, you know, watching porn, I stop, because I can feel myself slipping into old habits again. You know, I've been doing a lot of the negative shit recently, so I need to stop. Gets to April of 2024, and I'm back on track. I'm going really good. I'm in the best state of mind that I've ever been. I have my court case, get a really good result. I'm tinkering around with like various different business models at this point. I've posted my first ever YouTube video. And I was really just trying to get my mind right, get my body right, and get my finances right. I quit making music because I didn't really see it going anywhere long term, but fast forward to July. I've just done a really good month, and this is where things start to go downhill with my business. I've lost about $5,000 just in the month of July after making $10,000 the previous month. And so this is where Grace comes back into the equation. After not having spoken to her for multiple months, you know, sort of not really ending on great terms. You know, she was very upset. I asked her if she can come around to my house to help me make some advertisements for my business because it was failing and I couldn't exactly afford to keep, you know, paying people to make ads for me. But she agrees to come over and help me with some ads, you know, comes over. It's sort of awkward at first. Anyhow, we keep this up for the next couple of weeks. She's coming around to mine once or twice a week to help me with some videos. But it gets to August, and I think things are flowing extremely well. You know, we're having really good conversations. She's been helping me with my advertisements for free. So I see these all to be good signs. So after we're finished, you know, filming the videos, I make my move. I try and kiss her, but she rejects me. You know, I'm just sort of got my head pressed up against hers, but she's pulling away like she doesn't want to. So I sort of move back, you know, I let go, and I awkwardly apologize to her. I drive her home, you know, drop her off, and the drive back to my house was just a shameful, silent one, just thinking about what I've just done. You know, I'm so full of regret. So after this, I don't really see her that much, but fast forward about 2 or 3 weeks, I have her over to my house to help me with some advertisements again, because by this point, I'm really struggling financially. You know, my YouTube wasn't going good at the time, and my business had really started to go downhill. So she comes around and we are actually flowing, you know, the conversation's going really well this afternoon. And I'm getting the vibe, off of her, but I don't make any moves because of what had happened the previous time. I dropped her home that afternoon and she messages me telling me, you know, sorry for wasting my time that afternoon, but she really enjoyed talking to me. So 2 weeks later, she's at my house, and this time something does happen. One thing sort of leads to another. We end up making out, but it doesn't go any further than that, right? I drop her home after that, all good. Now, as I'm driving home, I sort of have this weird feeling in my chest. I don't know if it's regret, shame, guilt, or anything in between. But I don't feel like I should have just kissed this girl. I really felt like I was leading by lust at the time, which I was, which I'll get to in a second, all right? A few days later, she comes around to my house with intentions of, you know, making some advertisements with me. We make 0 advertisements. We end up each other that day. And I remember as soon as I finished, bro, having this feeling in my gut of like resentment towards myself, anger, hatred. You know, I felt very guilty, and I couldn't work out why at the time, because ever since I'd actually left this girl, all I had wanted was to find another girl to, you know, connect with. And now that I finally had that, you know, I felt so empty. I felt worse than I had actually felt over the past 7 months of being alone in this one moment from the decision that I just made. I drop her home like 10 minutes later, and once again, the drive back to my house was this shameful, guilt-filled, very silent drive. I'm just sitting there thinking about what I've just done. I felt very dirty. I felt disgusting. I felt disgusted with myself. Now, there's this quote that I absolutely love. Weak people chase pleasure and strong people chase purpose. This whole time in my YouTube videos and in my shorts, I've been preaching all this stuff about, you know, mindset, you know, grinding, just being an absolute hustler, staying disciplined. Meanwhile, this whole time behind the scenes, I was leading by lust in every single decision that I would make. And something I came to realize at the time was that this feeling of loneliness goes away instantly when you know the driving force. I felt lonely because of lack of purpose and insufficient use of time. I wasn't successful enough to actually be saying, you know, I've made it on YouTube, I can hang out with the people I want, I can go and do the things that I want to do. But I also wasn't a loser enough to go out and hang out with my old friends and, you know, get on the beers and all this bullshit. Now, where I am today, not much has actually changed in terms of my relationships with people, but I feel so much more fulfilled. I do not feel lonely whatsoever because my life is enriched with purpose. Sure, I talk to a few girls here and there. I talk to a lot more people than I was at that period of my life. But that just comes as a result of purpose, because if you put purpose first, if you are a purpose-driven individual, you will just naturally become more confident. Like, I can say I'm much more confident on camera, much more confident interacting socially than I was 8-9 months ago, purely because I have followed my purpose, I've followed my passion, and I've stuck to the path. When you do the things that you say you are going to do, you build this self-respect for yourself. Go figure. But if you keep breaking promises to yourself, say you're not going to have sex and you have sex, say you're not going to watch porn and you watch porn, you say you're not going to watch Netflix and you watch Netflix, you say you're going to get up at this time and you don't get up at that time, you're going to start to disrespect yourself. You're going to lose this trust for yourself. And so it's going to be so much harder to follow your purpose because you don't trust yourself to do that. But bro, if you really want to find the right girl, start talking to more beautiful women just to get more confident. Start doing the things you say that you are going to do. Put in the work and your time will come. It's only a matter of time. But before you get the girl that is worthy of you, you must become the guy who is worthy of the girl. Before God gives you the right woman, He must build you to be the right man. So don't rush it, bro. Relationships, losing your V card, all of this stuff can wait. If it's meant to be, it will be. Don't force it. Don't rush it. Hit that sub button. Stay grinding, bro.